You know that feeling when you're watching a presentation and it just clicks? And then there are the others, the ones that leave you totally lost. Well, get this, it's not you, it's the design. And it turns out there's a real science behind it all. So today, we're going to dive into some amazing research from Richard E. Meyer to figure out how our brains really learn when we're looking at words and pictures together. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with a problem that I bet every single one of us has run into. Then we'll take a look at why we've been getting tech and education wrong for like 100 years. From there, we'll get into the good stuff, how your brain is actually wired to learn, what makes knowledge really stick, and finally, we'll talk about this huge shift in thinking that changes everything. Okay, first up, words, pictures, and you. Let's start with that universal problem, a scene we are all unfortunately way too familiar with. I'm talking about the confusing, overloaded, just plain bad presentation. Come on, you've been there, right? Staring at a slide that's just jammed with text and images, and you can literally feel your brain just shutting down. You walk out of that room and remember, pretty much nothing. The most important thing to get right now is that this isn't your fault. It is a design problem. And that is the exact puzzle that the science of multimedia learning is here to solve. So, what are we even talking about when we say multimedia learning? Well, at its core, it's just what happens when our brains try to build an understanding from words and pictures at the same time. The key here is that it's not about just passively soaking up information like a sponge. Real learning, the kind that lasts, means you are actively building a structure of understanding inside your own mind. Okay, but before we jump into the solution, we really need to understand the problem. And it turns out our love affair with new technology has a long and frankly pretty disappointing history of actually getting in the way of real learning.
You know, for over 100 years, the pattern has been exactly the same. Think about it. Back in the 1920s, people said movies would totally replace textbooks. Then in the 30s, radio was going to be the thing that brought the world's best teachers into every home. By the 50s, it was all about educational TV. Every single time, the hype was just massive, and every single time, it ended in disappointment. So why? Why does this keep happening? It's because we've been obsessed with the technology, not the human being it's supposed to be helping.
And that right there brings us to the fundamental mistake. The technology-centered way of thinking, it starts with the flashy new gadget. It asks, hey, what cool things can this tech do? The goal is just to push information out. But the learner-centered approach, it flips that completely on its head. It starts with us, with the human mind, and asks, how do people actually learn? The goal isn't just to dump information on you, it's to be a guide for your brain as it makes sense of it all.
So if that's the right question, what's the answer? How does the human mind learn? This, my friends, is where it gets really, really cool. Because we now have this incredible cognitive theory that basically gives us a blueprint for what is happening inside your head when you're trying to learn from words and pictures.
Okay, so this whole theory rests on 3 key ideas about how our brains are wired. They're pretty simple, but they are so important. First up is what's called dual channels. This just means your brain has separate lanes, basically. One for visual stuff you see, and another for auditory stuff you hear. Second, there's limited capacity. And this is a big one. Each of those channels can only handle a little bit of information at once. It's like a narrow pipe. Try to force too much through and you get a clog. And third, active processing. This means you don't just absorb knowledge. Learning is an active sport. Your brain has to consciously select the important bits, organize them into a coherent structure, and then, this is crucial, connect them with what you already know. So this model here basically shows those 3 ideas in action. Check it out. Information comes in from the world, words and pictures. The words, if they're spoken, go into your ears and down that top channel, the auditory one. The pictures go into your eyes and down the bottom visual channel. In each lane, your brain is selecting the important stuff and organizing it. But here's where the magic happens, right in the middle, integration. Your working memory takes the organized sounds and the organized images and weaves them together, connecting them to your existing knowledge stored in long-term memory. That weaving together part, that's where true understanding is born. And when that integration process goes smoothly, you get a totally different kind of learning. We're talking about the difference between just cramming facts for a test versus actually deeply understanding something for good. This brings us to these 2 really different outcomes, rote learning versus meaningful learning. Rote learning, that's when you just have a bunch of disconnected facts rattling around in your head. Meaningful learning, though, is when you've built a coherent, organized mental model. And the real test, the thing that tells you which one you've achieved, is something called transfer. Can you take what you've learned and actually use it to solve a new, unfamiliar problem? If you can do that, that's the gold standard. Let's make this real. Imagine you get in your car, you press the brake pedal, and nothing. The car doesn't stop. Now, if you only have rote learning, you just memorized the names of the parts, like caliper and rotor, you're basically stuck. But if you have meaningful learning, you have a mental model of the whole system. You understand how the pedal pushes fluid, which activates the pistons, which squeeze the pads, and suddenly you can start thinking, maybe there's a fluid leak, maybe the pads are worn out. You can actually problem solve. That is transfer.
And that's the thing. Multimedia doesn't have to mean fancy, expensive technology. You could have a slick animation explaining how lightning works, or you could have a simple diagram in a book. Both of them are multimedia messages because they use words and pictures. What really matters is the design. Do the words and the images work together as a team to help your brain build that solid mental model, or are they just fighting each other and overloading your limited brain power? That's the only question that matters.
All right, so let's bring this all home and talk about that crucial learner-centered shift. Because once you understand the science of how people actually learn, it completely changes how you think about teaching anything. This really is the big idea. The old way of thinking, the information acquisition view, sees the learner as like an empty bucket, and the teacher's job is just to pour information into it. But the new way, the knowledge construction view, sees the learner as an active builder. Your brain is trying to make sense of the world. So the goal isn't to pour, it's to guide. It's to be a partner in helping that person construct their own understanding. Just listen to this quote from Thomas Edison all the way back in 1922. It's almost haunting, because it is the perfect example of that technology-centered trap. He was completely mesmerized by the technology, the delivery truck, and he forgot all about the person it was supposed to be delivering to. He thought the movie was just a better way to dump information into people's heads. And he was so wrong. It is the exact same mistake we've been making over and over again for 100 years.
So this leaves us with one last really powerful question to carry with you. The next time you're putting together a presentation, or even just watching an online tutorial, or shoot, even just explaining something to a friend, I want you to stop and ask yourself this. Is what I'm doing designed to show off some cool technology? Or is it designed for the human mind? Is it designed to actually help someone learn? Because that answer, that makes all the difference in the world.